Healing the Shame That Binds You by John Bradshaw. Picture a man named Max. On the surface, he seemed to have everything figured out. Good looks, sharp mind, the kind of salesman who could win anyone over. He had a family waiting at home, a solid career, the whole package. But Max carried a secret that even he couldn't fully understand. Right when everything was clicking into place, when success was practically knocking on his door, he'd disappear. He'd throw a few things in a bag, slide behind the wheel, and just drive. Everything left behind, his family, his job, his entire life. He'd end up working as a dishwasher, a janitor, helping out on garbage trucks, living like a shadow, completely isolated, until something inside him finally settled down. Then he'd come back, try to piece everything together, only to watch the whole pattern repeat itself. What makes someone run from their own success? Why destroy everything that's going well? The answer is a force that's both invisible and incredibly powerful, shaping our lives in ways we barely notice. John Bradshaw spent years studying this force because it almost destroyed him too. He gave it a name: toxic shame. The book we're diving into today, Healing the Shame That Binds You, has sold over 1.5 million copies and been translated into 10 languages. The reason is simple. It names something that haunts countless people in secret. Bradshaw was this brilliant speaker and writer, once training to become a priest, who found himself caught in addiction and this deep feeling that something was fundamentally wrong with him. After 10 years of recovery, he had a breakthrough moment. He finally identified what was eating at him. It wasn't about the bad things he'd done. It was believing he was bad, period. That discovery opened up a universal truth about being human. By the time we're done today, you'll understand the crucial difference between healthy shame and the toxic kind that traps us. You'll see how this toxic shame quietly moves through generations, creating cycles of pain and addiction. And here's the most important part. You'll discover the path to healing, a way to step out of hiding, reconnect with the lost parts of yourself, and finally become the authentic, powerful person you've always had the potential to be. This isn't just about grasping a psychological idea. It's about finding the key that unlocks your actual life. Ever feel like you're faking it? Like any second now, people are going to realize you're not as smart, talented, or good as they think. Even when things go well, does a little voice whisper, "You just got lucky this time?" If that sounds familiar, you're definitely not alone. This feeling, this quiet sense of being fundamentally flawed, is what Bradshaw calls toxic shame. To really get this, we need to go back to the beginning. Think about Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden. Genesis says that before everything went wrong, they were both naked and were not ashamed. They were completely themselves, nothing hidden. Pure acceptance. But after they tried to become something they weren't, after reaching beyond their humanity, they suddenly noticed their nakedness and felt a new, terrifying emotion: shame. Their first instinct? They hid. That story captures something about the human condition. We all start out authentic and unashamed. Babies don't hold back. They cry when hungry, laugh when happy. Pure, unfiltered existence. But then something shifts. We learn that certain parts of us aren't acceptable. Here's the thing, though. Not all shame is harmful. Bradshaw makes this brilliant comparison to cholesterol. There's the good kind and the bad kind. Healthy shame is like the good cholesterol for your soul. It's that natural emotion reminding you of your limits. It tells you, you're not God. It lets you make mistakes, ask for help, feel humble, and connect with something bigger than yourself. Healthy shame gives you permission to be human. It's the foundation of spirituality and growth. When you blush after saying something awkward, that's healthy shame. It grounds you in your humanity. Then there's toxic shame, the bad stuff. Toxic shame isn't a passing feeling, it's a state of being. It's this deep internalized belief that you, at your core, are flawed and defective. It's not about what you did, it's about who you are. Healthy guilt says, "I made a mistake." Toxic shame says, "I am a mistake." This feeling is so unbearably painful that we can't live with it exposed. So just like Adam and Eve, our primary instinct is to hide. We create what Bradshaw calls a false self, a mask, a persona we show the world. This false self can be anything: the perfectionist, the people-pleaser, the overachiever, the bully, the class clown. It's who we think we should be, covering up the flawed person we secretly believe we are. The energy it takes to maintain this false self, day after day, is exhausting. It disconnects us from our real feelings, our actual needs, our true selves. One writer called it soul murder. So where does toxic shame come from? How does a healthy, natural emotion turn into this life-destroying poison? For most of us, it starts in the one place we're supposed to be safe, our family. Bradshaw explains that toxic shame moves through generations. It passes from parent to child, often silently. Shame-based parents, who feel defective themselves, unknowingly transfer their shame to their children. They can't teach self-value because they don't value themselves. Let's get back to Max. His story perfectly illustrates this. Max's father, Jerome, was an alcoholic and sex addict who'd been abandoned by his own father. Max's mother, Felicia, was emotionally shut down, carrying secret sexual trauma from her family. Two deeply shame-based people who married not from love, but from need. Their marriage wasn't a partnership, it was a black hole. Max was an accidental pregnancy, another burden in an already broken system. He became what family therapists call the lost child, surviving by being invisible, having no needs, causing no trouble. In dysfunctional families like Max's, children get forced into rigid roles to keep the unstable system balanced. One becomes the hero, the overachiever making the family look good. Another becomes the scapegoat, the troublemaker taking all the blame. Another becomes the mascot, the cute one diffusing tension. Max's older brother, Ralph, became the family hero, super responsible, religious, trying to bring dignity to his broken home. But these roles are just different versions of false selves, masks covering deep shame and pain. Ralph covered his shame with perfectionism and religious righteousness, constantly shaming Max for not measuring up. Eventually, the family needed someone to carry all its pain, and Max became the scapegoat. His drinking, his disappearing acts, they served a purpose. They gave the family something to focus on, so they didn't have to look at their own despair. Max literally became the sacrificial goat, carrying generations of shame on his back, a burden that would eventually crush him. This brings us to the heart of how shame becomes toxic, the trauma of abandonment. When Bradshaw says abandonment, he doesn't just mean being physically left alone. The most painful abandonment happens when your caregivers are physically there, but emotionally absent. It's the neglect of what he calls our developmental dependency needs. As children, we have fundamental needs only parents can meet. We need to be held and touched. We need someone to mirror our feelings, to look at us with loving eyes, and show us that our anger, sadness, and joy are all okay. We need to know we matter, that our needs are important, and that we're loved not for what we do, but for who we are. But shame-based parents can't provide this. They're like starving people unable to feed their own children. They're so consumed by their own unmet needs, their own hole in the soul, that they look to their children to fill it. The child, in an amazing survival move, learns to take care of the parent's emotional needs. The child becomes the parent's parent. This is the ultimate abandonment. In trying to secure love and avoid being left alone, the child is forced to abandon their own true self. No one mirrors the child's feelings, so the child loses touch with them. Their feelings, needs, and natural drives become shame-bound. When your feelings are shame-bound, you feel shame whenever you feel anything. Ashamed for being angry, ashamed for being sad, ashamed for being needy, ashamed for being sexual. Your very life force gets wrapped in chains of shame. Think of it like this. A little boy, let's call him Farquhar, discovers his nose. He points to it, and his mom celebrates his brilliance. He discovers his ears, eyes, elbows, each time getting praised. Then one day he discovers his penis. He thinks, if they liked my nose, they're going to love this, so he proudly runs into the living room to show everyone his discovery. Suddenly, the world stops. His mother's face contorts with horror. He's whisked away and told in no uncertain terms that what he did was bad, dirty, and that he should never, ever touch himself there again. In that moment, a natural, innocent part of his being, his sexuality, becomes shame-bound. A vital part of his life force is now associated with being defective. This happens with all our emotions and drives. A child's natural anger meets, "Don't you dare get angry with me." A child's sadness meets, "Stop that crying, or I'll give you something to cry about." The message is clear. Your feelings aren't okay. You aren't okay. Over time, these shaming experiences pile up. The brain doesn't forget them. It stores them as collages of painful memories. A critical word, a disapproving look, a dismissive tone can trigger an internal shame spiral, replaying all those old feelings of worthlessness. This internalized shame becomes the engine driving all compulsive and addictive behaviors. Addiction, Bradshaw says, is a pathological relationship with any mood-altering experience that has life-damaging consequences. The key is mood-altering. When you believe you're fundamentally flawed, the pain of existing is intolerable. You need something, anything, to make that feeling go away. You need to escape from yourself. That escape can be alcohol, drugs, food, gambling, work, or even sex. The workaholic with their job and the alcoholic with their bottle are both having love affairs. The object of addiction becomes their primary relationship because it's the only thing temporarily numbing the pain of their ruptured self. This creates a vicious cycle. The shame-based person feels worthless, so they use their addiction to feel better. But the addictive behavior creates life-damaging consequences: hangovers, debt, broken relationships, which creates more shame. The new shame fuels the belief that they're no good, driving them right back to the addiction for relief. It's a squirrel cage, a prison with no exit. This is the dark cave of toxic shame, a place of isolation, hopelessness, and spiritual bankruptcy. So how do we get out? How do we find the light? The book offers a powerful parable. A prisoner gets thrown into a pitch-black cave and told there's a way out. He sees a tiny hole in the ceiling, a faint glimmer of light far above. Convinced that light is his only escape, he spends all his energy, day after day, piling rocks and dirt, trying to build a mound high enough to reach it. He works until completely exhausted, and just as he can almost touch the opening, he collapses and dies. When his captors come for his body, they roll away the huge stone covering the entrance. Sunlight floods the cave, revealing a tunnel in the wall, right next to the mound of rocks he'd built. The passage to freedom was there all along, but it was in the darkness, not the light. He was so focused on reaching for light that he never explored the darkness around him. The moral is profound. To heal our toxic shame, we can't run from the darkness. We must embrace it. The only way out is through. This is what Bradshaw calls the externalization process. To heal internalized shame, we must bring it into the open. And this starts with the scariest step of all, coming out of hiding. The poison of toxic shame was created in relationships, and it can only be healed in relationships. We must risk breaking our isolation and finding at least one safe, non-shaming person to share our secret with. It could be a therapist, a trusted friend, a clergy member, or a support group. Bradshaw places enormous value on 12-step programs like Alcoholics Anonymous, not just for addiction, but as a model for healing shame itself. Why? Because the very first thing you do in a 12-step meeting is stand up and admit your deepest shame. My name is X, and I'm an alcoholic. You bring your darkness into the light of a community, and in return, you don't receive judgment or disgust, you receive acceptance. As you share your story and hear others share theirs, something miraculous happens. You realize you're not alone. In the loving, accepting eyes of others, you see your own worth reflected back at you. The interpersonal bridge broken in childhood begins to be repaired. The 12 steps themselves offer a powerful spiritual path for transforming toxic shame. Let's look at the core ideas. Step 1. We admitted we were powerless and our lives had become unmanageable. This is the great surrender. Giving up the false belief that you can control this alone. Embracing your healthy shame, your human limitation, and acknowledging you need help. Steps 2 and 3. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity, and made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. This is about reconnecting with a source of power beyond your damaged ego. Toxic shame makes us play God, trying to be perfect and control everything. These steps restore us to our rightful place as human beings, dependent on something larger than ourselves. Steps 4 through 9 are about cleaning house. You make a searching and fearless moral inventory of yourself. You admit your wrongs to God, to yourself, and to another human being, and you make amends to those you've harmed. This isn't about wallowing in guilt, it's about taking responsibility. For a shame-based person, this is revolutionary. You discover that your wrongs are mistakes you made, not proof that you are a mistake. You begin transforming toxic shame back into healthy guilt, the kind that motivates you to repair damage and grow. Finally, steps 10, 11, and 12 are about living a new life. You continue taking personal inventory. You deepen your conscious contact with your higher power through prayer and meditation, and you carry the message of hope to others still suffering. The journey ends with a spiritual awakening, the ultimate healing for spiritual bankruptcy caused by toxic shame. But there's another, deeper layer to this healing journey. It's what Bradshaw is perhaps most famous for: reclaiming and championing your wounded inner child. The inner child is a metaphor for the part of you frozen in time, holding all the blocked emotional energy from childhood abandonment. It's the source of your compulsions, your insatiable needs, your unresolved grief. To truly become free, you have to go back and feel the feelings you weren't allowed to feel as a child. This is what Bradshaw calls original pain work. It's about grieving the childhood you lost. You can't do this alone. You need support from a safe group or therapist to validate your pain. You have to go back and experience the anger, hurt, sadness, and loneliness that your false self was created to protect you from. It's not the trauma that makes us sick, but the inability to express the trauma. By doing this grief work, you unfreeze that blocked energy and liberate your inner child. Once you've connected with that child, you can start to reparent them. You can give that child the messages they needed to hear but never did. Affirmations like, "I'm so glad you're here. It's okay to have needs. It's okay to be angry. I will never leave you." Bradshaw offers a powerful technique from neurolinguistic programming to heal specific shaming memories. He calls it giving back the hot potato. The idea is that when your parents acted shamelessly, by raging, criticizing, or blaming, you took on their shame. You've been carrying it for them your whole life. This technique lets you give it back. Here's how it works. You identify a painful shaming memory. For example, a client remembered his second-grade priest throwing his report card on the ground because he failed reading. You anchor that feeling of humiliation with a physical touch, like pressing your left thumb and forefinger together. Then you identify resources you have now as an adult that you didn't have as a child. For this client, it was articulateness and assertiveness. You access a strong memory of being assertive and anchor that feeling with a different touch, like your right thumb and forefinger. Finally, you fire both anchors at the same time and mentally re-enter the old scene, but this time, you bring your adult resources with you. You, as your adult self, step in to protect your inner child. You confront the priest. You tell him how wrong he is to humiliate a child. You express your anger and pain, And then you symbolically hand him back the soggy, black bag of shame he gave you, the shame that was never yours to carry in the first place. By redoing these scenes, you change your personal history, not the facts, but the emotional impact. You reclaim your power from the past. As you do this work, something incredible begins to happen. You start integrating all the disowned parts of yourself. The angry parts, the needy parts, the sexual parts, the weak parts. All the pieces you had to split off and hide are welcomed back home. You begin changing the toxic inner voices, the critical self-talk that's been running on loop in your head your whole life. You learn to stop the obsessive shaming thoughts and replace them with positive, self-affirming truths. And this leads to the ultimate act of healing, choosing to love and forgive yourself. Bradshaw emphasizes that love isn't just a feeling, it's a decision. It's an act of will. You can choose to accept yourself unconditionally, right now, exactly as you are. This doesn't mean you condone past mistakes, but it means you accept your fundamental being as lovable. You start saying, I love myself for my imperfections. I love myself for my mistakes. I love myself for being human. This unconditional self-acceptance is the antidote to toxic shame. It reunites the self that was ruptured. It creates at-one-ment. When you love yourself, you begin treating yourself differently. You give yourself time and attention. You listen to your own needs. You learn to be assertive and set boundaries. You reframe your mistakes not as proof of defectiveness, but as opportunities to learn and grow. And this entire journey culminates in what Bradshaw calls the discovery process, a true spiritual awakening. Healing your toxic shame doesn't just make you feel better, it reconnects you with your true self, your spiritual destiny. Joseph Campbell called it following your bliss. It's finding the work, the people, the purpose that makes you feel truly alive. When you've cleared away the wreckage of the false self, you can finally hear the call of your grand will, the deep, authentic purpose that's been waiting for you all along. This spiritual awakening brings 7 profound blessings. First, sound choosing. You begin making choices from your authentic self, not from fear. You find the path that was always meant for you. Second, secure attachment to a higher power. Your healthy shame, your humility, allows you to connect with a power greater than yourself, finding a source of strength and security that's unshakable. Third, silence and solitude. You're no longer afraid to be alone. Solitude becomes a nourishing space for prayer, meditation, and connection with your inner world. Fourth, solidarity and unity consciousness. You begin seeing the interconnectedness of all things. The us versus them mentality dissolves, replaced by deep compassion and a sense of oneness with all humanity. Fifth, the sacrament of the present moment. You're no longer trapped in regrets of the past or anxieties of the future. You learn to live with authentic presence, finding the sacred in ordinary moments of life. Sixth, synchronicity. You start noticing ordinary miracles. As you follow your bliss, the right people, opportunities, and resources seem to appear as if by magic. Doors open where you never knew they existed. And finally, the 7th blessing is a life of serenity, service, and a sense of humor. You find inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances. You develop a genuine desire to give back and help others still in pain. And most importantly, you learn to laugh at yourself. You embrace the courage to be imperfect, and in that imperfection you find true joy and freedom. The journey of healing the shame that binds you isn't easy. It requires courage, honesty, and willingness to face the darkness you've been running from your whole life. But as John Bradshaw so powerfully shows us, hidden within that darkness isn't just pain, but the key to your own liberation, your own wholeness, and the magnificent, authentic life that's waiting for you. As we come to the end of our exploration of healing the shame that binds you, I find myself with a profound sense of reverence for this work. This isn't just another self-help book. It feels more like a sacred text for the modern soul. What John Bradshaw accomplished is nothing short of revolutionary. He took a feeling that thrives in darkness and secrecy, a feeling most of us are afraid to even name, and brought it into the light, giving millions of people a vocabulary for their deepest pain. In a world becoming more driven by perfectionism, comparison, and the curated images we see on social media, this message is more urgent than ever. The pressure to present a flawless false self online and in our daily lives is immense. We're constantly being measured, and we're constantly measuring ourselves against impossible standards. This book serves as a powerful antidote to that cultural poison. It reminds us that our true worth lies not in our perfection, but in our humanity. The most powerful lesson for me is the distinction between being and doing. We live in a culture of human doings, where our value is tied to our achievements, our productivity, our success. Bradshaw's work calls us back to the simple, radical truth that we are human beings, and our being is inherently worthy of love, regardless of what we do or don't do. The idea that you can choose to love yourself, unconditionally, right now, not when you lose the weight, or get the promotion, or fix all your flaws, is a life-altering concept. It's a declaration of freedom. The concept of the wounded inner child is another cornerstone of this work that's transformed the landscape of therapy and personal growth. It gives us a compassionate framework for understanding our self-destructive behaviors, our addictions, and our relational struggles. They're not signs of our badness, but cries for help from a part of us that was hurt long ago and never healed. By learning to reparent that child within, we don't just fix our problems, we heal our souls. So how can you begin applying these powerful ideas in your own life? Starting today, here are a few simple, practical actions. First, just for the next 24 hours, practice becoming an observer of your own inner voice. Don't try to change it or argue with it. Just listen. Notice when the inner critic shows up. What does it say? Whose voice does it sound like? Simply bringing awareness to this internal dialogue is the first step in disarming it. Second, think of one small mistake you've made recently, something you've been beating yourself up about. Maybe you said the wrong thing or forgot something important. Now say this out loud to yourself. Even though I made that mistake, I choose to love and accept myself unconditionally. It's okay for me to be human. Feel the shift that happens when you offer yourself compassion instead of criticism. And third, take a small risk in a safe relationship. Share one small vulnerability, one feeling you'd normally hide, with a trusted friend or family member. Notice what it feels like to bring a tiny piece of your authentic self out of hiding, and have it be met with acceptance. This is how healing begins, one small act of courage at a time. That was a summary of Healing the Shame That Binds You by John Bradshaw. We've touched on the major themes today, but I have to be honest with you. A summary is like looking at a map of a beautiful country, while reading the book is like taking the journey yourself. The real magic isn't just in understanding the ideas, but in feeling them. It happens when you read a story that mirrors your own, or a sentence that lands with such truth it takes your breath away. This summary is your map, to help you decide if this is a journey you want to take. If anything we've discussed today has struck a chord deep within you, I urge you to get a copy. Reading it isn't just an act of learning. It's an act of profound self-compassion that can genuinely change the way you see yourself and your place in the world. You'll find a link to the book in the description below. Also, if you found this summary valuable and want to continue exploring life-changing books from the billionaire's bookshelf, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It lets me know this work is making a difference, and it ensures you won't miss our next journey together. Let's keep growing, one book at a time.